The auction block reeked of salt water and desperation. Elena could barely stand, her legs trembling beneath the tattered remains of her nightgown, now soaked through with blood and seawater. The infant she had birthed only hours before in the filthy hold of a slave ship was gone, ripped from her arms the moment they dragged her onto the docks of Tortuga. She didn't even know if her daughter still lived. 20 doubloons for the wench, a toothless merchant shouted, his eyes crawling over her like insects. Fresh from childbirth, so you know she's fertile. Laughter erupted from the crowd of pirates, slavers, and dock workers gathered in the scorching Caribbean sun. Elena's vision blurred with tears and exhaustion. Blood trickled down her inner thighs, staining the wooden platform beneath her bare feet. The iron shackles around her wrists bit into her skin as the auctioneer yanked her forward for better display. "Do I hear 25? The auctioneer bellowed. 30! Called a fat Spanish captain with gold rings on every finger. Elena closed her eyes. She had been the daughter of a minor Portuguese nobleman, engaged to a merchant's son, with a future of predictable comfort ahead of her. Then the raiders came. They burned her family's coastal estate, killed her father and brothers, and took the women. She endured 3 months in the hold of that cursed ship, where a sailor forced himself on her night after night until her belly began to swell. And now this. Sold like livestock while her body still bled from bringing life into a world that had shown her only cruelty. 50 doubloons. The voice cut through the jeering crowd like a blade through silk, low, commanding, and utterly devoid of the crude hunger in the other men's tones. The auction fell silent. Elena forced her eyes open. A man stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed over a dark coat that bore no colors or insignia. He was tall, with black hair tied back and a face weathered by sun and sea. A cutlass hung at his hip, and a brace of pistols crossed his chest. But it was his eyes that made the breath catch in Elena's throat, storm grey and impossibly calm, looking at her not as merchandise but as something else entirely. "Captain Graves," the auctioneer stammered, suddenly nervous. "We didn't expect—" 50 doubloons, the pirate repeated, his gaze never leaving Elena. "Do I hear higher?" The fat Spanish captain opened his mouth, then thought better of it and shook his head. No one else spoke. The name Graves carried weight in these waters, captain of the Serpent's Mercy, a ship that had sent a dozen naval frigates to the bottom of the sea. Men who crossed him tended to disappear. "Sold to Captain Graves," the auctioneer announced, relief flooding his voice. The pirate walked forward and tossed a leather purse onto the platform. Coins clinked inside. He climbed the steps with easy grace and stood before Elena, studying her face with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Can you walk?" he asked quietly. Elena tried to answer, but her knees buckled. She would have fallen if he hadn't caught her, one arm sliding behind her back. The touch was firm, but not rough. He smelled of gunpowder and the open ocean. "I'll take that as a no," he murmured. Without ceremony, he scooped her into his arms, shackles and all. She was too weak to protest. As he carried her through the parting crowd, a voice called out, "What's your interest in damaged goods, Graves? Can't find yourself a proper woman?" The captain paused. His voice remained level, but Elena felt the tension coil through his body. "Any man who calls a woman goods isn't man enough to understand my interest. And if you speak of her that way again, Beckett, you'll be explaining yourself to the sharks." He continued walking. Elena's head lolled against his shoulder, her consciousness flickering like a candle in the wind. She caught glimpses of the harbour, ships with tattered sails, taverns spilling drunken sailors onto the streets, gulls screaming overhead. Then the cool darkness of a ship's cabin enveloped her. Graves laid her on a proper bed with clean linens. The gentleness of the gesture made something crack in Elena's chest. She began to sob, deep, wrenching sounds she couldn't control. "Easy," he said, kneeling beside the bed. "You're safe now. No one will touch you here." "My baby," Elena choked out. "They took my baby. I don't even know if she's—" "What did she look like?" The question startled her. "Small. Perfect. She had my eyes. Brown and dark hair." Graves stood. "I'll find out. Rest now. My ship's doctor will tend to you." "Why?" The word escaped before Elena could stop it. "Why did you buy me?" He paused at the door, his back to her. For a long moment he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet she almost missed it. Because 20 years ago my mother stood on that same auction block, and no one saved her. The door closed behind him, and Elena was alone with her tears and the gentle rocking of the ship. Chapter 2. The Serpent's Mercy. 3 days passed before Elena could stand without dizziness. The ship's doctor, a former naval surgeon named MacLeod who'd turned pirate after being flogged for refusing an unjust order, tended her wounds with surprising skill. He gave her bitter teas for the bleeding, fresh water, and actual food instead of the mouldy bread and rancid meat she'd survived on for months. Captain Graves visited each evening, staying only moments. He would ask if she needed anything, receive her quiet thanks and leave. He never touched her, never lingered. His crew, she learned from MacLeod, had been ordered on pain of death to leave her unmolested. "The captain's not like other pirates," MacLeod told her as he changed her bandages. "He has rules, no rape, no torture, no attacking ships that fly white flags or carry children. Some call him soft, others call him the only honorable man in these waters." "And what do you call him?" Elena asked. The old surgeon smiled. "A man trying to atone for sins he didn't commit." On the 4th day, Elena was strong enough to venture onto the deck. The Serpent's Mercy was a 3-masted brigantine, her hull painted black as midnight, her sails bearing no flag. The crew numbered around 60, a mix of races and backgrounds all bound by loyalty to Graves rather than greed. They eyed Elena with curiosity, but kept their distance. She found the captain at the helm, studying charts with his quartermaster, a scarred woman named Raina who wore her hair in dozens of small braids threaded with gold. "Captain," Elena said softly. He turned, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or concern. "You shouldn't be up yet. I needed air, and I needed to thank you properly. You owe me no thanks. You saved my life. I paid 50 doubloons. That's not salvation. It's a transaction." His voice was harder now, a wall going up between them. Raina cleared her throat. "I'll check on the crew." She left them alone at the helm. Elena stepped closer, gripping the rail for support. "You found out about my daughter." It wasn't a question. She'd seen the knowledge in his eyes the moment he looked at her. Graves was silent for a long moment. Then, "The infant was sold to a childless couple, Portuguese merchants who lost their own baby to fever last year. They paid well for her and seemed decent enough." The relief nearly drove Elena to her knees. "She's alive, she's safe. As safe as any child can be in this world." "Will you?" Elena's voice broke. "Will you help me get her back?" "No." The word hit like a physical blow. "What?" Graves finally looked at her fully, and she saw anguish in those grey eyes. "You were sold because you're a noblewoman with no protection. Your daughter was sold because she has no mother. Together you're both vulnerable. Separated she has a chance at a real life. Those merchants will raise her with food, shelter, education, everything you can no longer give her. She's my child, and because you love her you'll let her go." His voice was gentle but unyielding. "I know this cruelty, Elena. My mother died when I was 10 because she tried to escape slavery with me in her arms. If she'd left me behind, she might have survived. If she'd let them sell me to a craftsman instead of a plantation, I might have learned a trade instead of how to kill." Eleanor's tears came hot and furious. "So I should just forget her? Pretend she never existed?" "No, you should live, survive. Become strong enough that if she ever needs you, you'll be someone who can help rather than another victim." He paused. "And you should have a name again. What were you called before they took everything?" "Elena Maria dos Santos." "Then you're Elena Maria dos Santos, free woman under my protection. Not property, not goods. A person with a name and a future." He pulled something from his coat, a small leather document case. Inside was a certificate of manumission, already filled out with her name and signed by him as witness. It wouldn't hold up in most courts, but in the pirate havens, it meant she couldn't be legally claimed by anyone. "This doesn't erase what was done to you," Graves said quietly. "Nothing can. But it's a beginning." Elena took the papers with shaking hands. For the first time since the raiders came, she felt something other than despair. It was small and fragile, but it was there, a spark of hope. "What happens to me now?" she asked. "That's your choice. I can put you ashore at any port, give you coin enough to start over, or—" He hesitated. Or you can stay aboard the Serpent's Mercy. Learn to sail, learn to fight, become part of the crew if you prove yourself worthy. Rayna was once like you, taken and sold. Now she's my quartermaster, and the most dangerous person on this ship." Elena looked out at the endless blue horizon. Behind her was everything she'd lost: family, innocence, her child. Ahead was nothing but uncertainty. But uncertainty, she realized, was better than the certainty of slavery. "I'll stay," she said. "Teach me." For the first time, Captain Graves smiled. It transformed his severe face into something almost gentle. "Then welcome aboard, Elena Maria dos Santos. Your first lesson begins tomorrow at dawn." Chapter 3. Tides of Change. 6 months at sea changed Elena in ways she couldn't have imagined. Her hands, once soft from a noble lady's life, grew calloused from hauling lines and scrubbing decks. Her skin bronzed under the Caribbean sun. She learned to climb the rigging without fear, to navigate by the stars, to load and fire a pistol. Rayna taught her to fight with a blade, and though Elena would never match the quartermaster's skill, she became proficient enough to defend herself. But the hardest lessons weren't about survival, they were about trust. Graves kept his distance, treating her with the same respectful formality he showed all his crew. Yet Elena found herself watching him during his shifts at the helm, noting the way he carried the weight of every decision, how he listened to even the lowest sailors' concerns, the rare moments when his guard dropped, and she glimpsed the man beneath the captain. She learned his story in pieces from the crew. Born to a slave woman and an unknown father, purchased at age 10 by a brutal plantation owner, escaped at 15 by killing his overseer, took to piracy not for gold but for freedom, built his reputation on a strange code of honor that made him both respected and despised among the pirate brotherhood. "He's never taken a woman aboard before you," Rayna told her one evening as they sat in the crow's nest sharing a bottle of rum. "Never shown interest in any woman I've seen. Some of the crew think he's broken inside. That slavery killed whatever part of him could love." "Do you think that?" Elena asked. Rayna's smile was knowing. "I think he looks at you the way a drowning man looks at air, but he's terrified of what that means." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't, please. I've seen how you watch him, how you both dance around each other like circling sharks, too afraid to close the distance." Rayna took a swig of rum. "You're both fools. Life's too short for that kind of cowardice." The words haunted Elena for days. She tried to focus on her duties, but awareness of Graves became a constant hum beneath her skin. The way his voice rumbled through orders. The rare sound of his laugh when MacLeod told a particularly terrible joke. The sight of him stripped to the waist on hot days, scars crisscrossing his back, a map of suffering that made her chest ache. Everything came to a head during a storm. It struck 3 weeks later, a hurricane that turned the sea into a roaring beast. The Serpent's Mercy pitched and rolled, waves crashing over the deck like mountains of water. Elena worked the lines alongside the crew, soaked to the bone, muscles screaming with exhaustion. "Secure that mast!" Graves bellowed over the wind. "Rayna, bring us about!" A wave struck broadside and Elena lost her footing. She slid across the deck toward the rail, fingers scrabbling for purchase. For one terrible moment, she saw the churning sea rushing up to swallow her. Then Graves was there, his arm locked around her waist, hauling her back from the edge. They crashed together against the mast, his body shielding hers as another wave broke over them. When the water receded, they were pressed together, gasping. His face was inches from hers, grey eyes wild with fear and something else, something raw and desperate. "I can't lose you," he said, the words torn from him by the storm. "God help me, Elena, I can't." She kissed him. It was desperate and salt-soaked and probably foolish, but she didn't care. His lips were warm despite the cold rain, and when he kissed her back, it felt like coming home after being lost at sea forever. The storm raged around them, but for that moment, nothing else existed. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Graves rested his forehead against hers. "This is madness," he whispered. "Yes," Elena agreed. But I've been through worse, and I'm tired of being afraid. I have nothing to offer you. No home, no safety, no future beyond the next horizon. Then we'll sail to that horizon together and see what lies beyond. She cupped his scarred face in her hands. You gave me back my name, Graves. Let me give you something in return. The chance to be loved not despite your past, but including it. All of you. Scars and honor and terrible decisions and all. He kissed her again, softer this time, and Elena felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Joy. The storm passed. The Serpent's Mercy survived, and when dawn broke over calm waters, the crew found their captain and Elena at the helm together, her hand in his, both watching the sunrise with matching expressions of fragile hope. Chapter 4. A Name Worth Fighting. For 3 months later, the Serpent's Mercy sailed into the pirate haven of Nassau, a lawless settlement where England's authority meant nothing, and brotherhood among thieves was the only government. Elena stood at the rail beside Graves, now wearing practical breeches, a loose shirt and a pistol at her hip. She'd become a full member of the crew, respected for her skill and courage. More than that, she'd become Graves's partner in every sense, sharing his cabin, his decisions, his heart. But Nassau brought complications. Captain Blackwood's calling a council, Rayner informed them as they docked. All captains are required to attend, there's trouble. Blackwood was the closest thing Nassau had to a king, a brutal pirate lord who commanded 5 ships and controlled most of the port's trade. Graves had avoided him for years, knowing their philosophies were incompatible. The council met in a tavern that reeked of sweat and rum. 20 captains gathered around a massive table, their crews packing the room. Elena stayed close to Graves, ignoring the leers and whispers. Women at council were rare. Blackwood was a mountain of a man with a beard like black wire and eyes that missed nothing. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice filling the room. "We have a problem. The Royal Navy is sending a fleet to destroy Nassau. 6 ships of the line arriving within the month. We must unite or be destroyed." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. "I propose an alliance," Blackwood continued. "All ships, all crews, under one command, mine. We'll fortify the harbor, meet them head-on and send those Navy dogs to hell." "And after?" Graves asked quietly. "What happens to this alliance when the Navy's defeated?" Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then we divide the spoils and go our separate ways. Unless, of course, you object to unity, Graves." "I object to tyranny wearing unity's mask." Graves stood and the room tensed. "You don't want an alliance, Blackwood, you want an empire. And you'll sacrifice every man here to build it." Bold words from a man who plays at honor, while the real pirates do the bloody work. Blackwood leaned forward. "Tell me, Graves, is it true you keep a woman aboard your ship? The one you bought at auction?" Every eye turned to Elena. She felt the weight of their judgment, their curiosity, their contempt. "Her name is Elena Maria dos Santos," Graves said coldly. "She's a free woman and a member of my crew. What concern is that of yours? Just wondering if you've gone soft, Captain, trading your edge for a warm bed." Blackwood's grin was poisonous. "Maybe we should put it to a vote. Any captain who keeps a woman aboard, any captain who refuses to take prizes, refuses to torture enemies, refuses to act like a proper pirate, should forfeit their seat at this council." The room erupted in shouts. Some captains agreed with Blackwood, others defended Graves. Eleanor's hand moved to her pistol, then a new voice cut through the chaos. "I object." Everyone turned. A tall woman in captain's coat stood at the back of the room, her skin dark as polished mahogany, her eyes fierce. Captain Adana of the Storm Queen, one of the most feared pirates in the Caribbean. "If we're voting on who belongs at this council," Adana continued, striding forward, "then perhaps we should discuss captains who take pleasure in torturing prisoners, who sell children into slavery, who rape and murder not for survival but for sport." She stopped beside Elena. "I've sailed with Captain Graves. His honor isn't weakness. It's the only thing that separates us from the monsters we claim to fight against." "Well said," added another captain, Cristobal, a Spanish deserter who commanded the Red Dawn. "I stand with Graves." The room divided. Nearly half the captains sided with Graves and Adana, refusing Blackwood's demand for submission. The other half sneered and spat, calling them cowards and worse. Blackwood's face darkened. Then you've chosen sides. When the Navy comes, you're on your own. We always were, Graves replied. He took Elena's hand and led her from the tavern, followed by his allies. Outside, under the stars, Adana clasped Graves's shoulder. You've made an enemy tonight. I made that enemy years ago. Tonight I just stopped pretending otherwise. What will you do? Graves looked at Eleanor, then at the Serpent's Mercy waiting in the harbour. Sail. Fight when we must. Live as free as we can for as long as we can, and honour the names of those who deserve to be remembered. Elena squeezed his hand. She thought of her daughter, growing up safe with her new family. She thought of the woman she'd been, broken and bleeding on an auction block. She thought of who she was now, strong, skilled, loved. We should name her, Elena said suddenly. Name who? My daughter. In my heart, I mean. She has whatever name her new parents gave her, and that's good. But I should name her too, remember her properly. Graves pulled her close, his arms strong around her. What would you call her? Hope. Eleanor's voice was steady. Her name is Hope. They stood together on the dock, the pirate captain and the woman he'd saved, watching the moon paint silver across the water. Tomorrow would bring more danger, more difficult choices. The Royal Navy was coming. Blackwood's hatred would fester into violence. The sea was cruel and life was uncertain. But tonight, Elena Maria dos Santos had a name, a purpose and a love worth fighting for. She was no longer a victim of fate's cruelty. She was a survivor, a sailor, a woman who'd risen from the depths of despair to stand on her own 2 feet. And that, she realized, was its own kind of freedom, the truest kind of all. The Serpent's Mercy's bell rang out across the harbour, calling the crew home. Graves and Elena walked toward their ship hand in hand, ready to face whatever storms lay ahead. Together.